Hi, I'm John, and I am building Squonk Bike Park while documenting the process here on YouTube. Rather than trying to do a bunch of different videos on every single question, I thought it would make the most sense just to do a quick Q&A episode to cover these most common questions, and then if there's a question I missed, let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer it in a future video like this. First question is, do I have any trails? And the answer is yes. There's about 2 miles of downhill trail, and there's a 1 mile long temporary climb trail that we just use right now to get to the top to ride after digging. The first downhill trail is a blue machine-built flowy trail with big berms, some jumps, a drop, and a short steep chute at the end. The main drawback to this trail is that there's a very small, like 60 feet of vert climb in the middle of it, and that's because it was originally designed as part of a pedal park, plus we would climb up the shuttle road and then turn off of it onto this trail, so we were already climbing anyway, so it didn't really matter. This can be fixed so that it's all downhill. We'll have to scrap a little bit of the top of the trail, but it just hasn't been a priority since the climb is pretty small and most people just don't seem to mind it. The second trail is a mix of machine built and rake and ride. So the top has a machine built drop into a gap step down, and then after this it's all rake and ride with some off camber sections, some small catch berms, and a natural rock drop. But this leads into a machine built section that finally leads to the blue jump line. The second trail is really 2 trails merged together, which is why part of it is machine built and part of it is rake and ride. The goal here was just to get something top to bottom that we could ride after dig days, so we connected the two, and long term there's going to be a way to kind of choose different options as you get halfway down the mountain. 2 other common questions I've had is 1, what is a squonk? And 2, where is the park located? These 2 questions are related, so I'm going to try to tackle both of them while explaining how I chose the name of the bike park and a little bit more sort of behind the logo and all that stuff. The park is located in Imler, Pennsylvania, and the squonk is a local folklore creature. You can kind of think of it like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, but it's just much less popular. The folklore behind the squonk is pretty minimal. It supposedly only exists in Pennsylvania, and it's described as this ugly creature with misfitting skin, warts, and moles. It's also supposed to be unhappy and weeping all the time, and I think it weeps so much that you can track it by following its tears on the trail. It's a very, very weird creature. So based on that description, it's no surprise that the drawings of the squonk are pretty dark and ugly, which begs the question, how did I end up naming the park after this really ugly creature? When I started thinking about the name of the park, I had a few requirements for the name. The first is that I needed to be able to get a domain name and social handles to match. So I come from a tech background, so this is one of the first things I sort of start thinking about is how can I make SEO work? How can I make sure that people who hear about this company or whatever it is can find it on the internet? And this is especially important for non-technical people who maybe are used to every website being a .com and don't know about other domain names and stuff like that. So I wanted all of these social handles and everything else to have the same exact name. And in this case, it's Squonk Bike Park. So if you go anywhere to find us on social or to the website, it's going to be squonkbikepark.com or just Squonk Bike Park on Instagram. It's the same everywhere. The second criteria was that I needed it to be something that was easy to hear in a conversation and then find online. So a lot of times people hear about trails when they're at a parking lot after a ride. Somebody will say, hey, you should go check out Squonk, it's a great place. I wanted a name that if somebody heard it, they could go search it on Google and find it pretty easily. A third criteria I had for the name was that I needed to have some sort of ideas around how to brand the name or to make a logo or something like that. It didn't have to be concrete, I just wanted a rough idea of if I made a t-shirt, what might that look like. It also needed to be kid and sponsor friendly. So early on in this naming process, I went to Reddit trying to find ideas for the park name, and if you've ever been on Reddit, you know that they're great at coming up with puns and funny names, but not all of them are necessarily kid or sponsor friendly. For instance, one suggestion was Pedophile Park, which doesn't sound like a great place for kids or sponsors to get involved with. Another criteria was that it needed to work for the whole park. So while I was on Reddit, another suggestion I saw was Amish Squamish, which kind of works because there's a lot of Amish people living in Pennsylvania, and there's even an Amish buggy sign on the route that I take to the park every day. The main problem with Amish Squamish is that it didn't really describe the entire park. Most of the trails here will not feel like Squamish at all. With the rocks and stuff we have, they're just very different, so it felt more appropriate to save that for a specific trail where we might be able to get the feel of a Squamish trail and to not use it for the whole park. So I started hunting for the land for this bike park several years ago, so I've been thinking about names for a long time, but I've struggled to find one that I really felt great about. It wasn't until I started exploring like local history and folklore that I found the squonk and thought this name is pretty great, but when I saw the image of it, I thought, crap, that's not the logo I want for this. So rather than giving up, I decided to take some artistic liberties and see if I could come up with like a cuter version of the squonk that I would be okay with. I'm not an amazing artist myself, but these days I feel like AI gives everyone the ability to at least brainstorm ideas, and that's really all I needed at this point. I just wanted a rough idea of what a cute squonk might look like. So I went to ChatGPT and started experimenting with various prompts just to figure out, could I come up with a version of the squonk that is maybe not true to what a squonk is supposed to look like, but would work for the bike park and would work for t-shirts and that sort of thing. I'll probably do another video in the future discussing all the ways I've used AI to help with the business side of things, because it's quite useful for a lot of that. But the very quick summary for now is that I find AI most useful for things like ideas, prototyping, and brainstorming stuff. And then you can take what it creates and you can sort of polish it into a final product. So with the Squonk, it was great for coming up with all sorts of wild ideas of what a Squonk might look like if it was cuter or like more represented, cute animals like a rabbit or like a fox. And then I could take those and get feedback from other people. Where the AI fell short was on the finer details. So it often draws weird artifacts, or it ignores like the top tube of a bike, or it might put linkage in really weird places on a mountain bike. So if I asked it to change something, like one time I asked it to change something specifically on the bike, and it changed the Squonk to an entirely different creature in the process. So a lot of this could be frustrating at times. It's gotten better as AI has improved and updated, but it still isn't perfect. Despite not being perfect, I still think AI makes this design process better for everyone, because now that I'm working with a designer, I don't have to try to convey something that's in my head and then guess at what I'm thinking. Instead, I can show them pictures and say, this is roughly what I like about this picture. I like this part of this one. I want to kind of merge those together and make the final logo. So I don't actually have the final version of the Squonk done, but it's making that process a lot easier because we have something that we can both visually see and work from. So getting back to the park name, once I got this design part done and I knew that I could come up with something that was cute enough that I was happy with it, I decided that Squonk Bike Park was the name that I wanted to use. It met all of my criteria. I knew, for example, I could get the URL and social handles of Squonk Bike Park. I felt it would be reasonably easy to hear Squonk in conversation, and eventually it should be something that you can find on the first page of Google. We already talked about a cute Squonk for branding, so that kind of covers that section. The fourth criteria of being kid and sponsor friendly, I think a cute Squonk also covers all of those. Plus there's the option for plushies and things like that down the road that kids might love. Finally, I knew it would work for the entire park, not just a trail, because it wasn't really describing the riding here. It was just something tied to local folklore. Now, going back to the location, the park is in Imler, Pennsylvania. So if you're unfamiliar with the area, this is about 2 hours east of Pittsburgh. It's about an hour south of State College, which is where Penn State University is located. And it's about 20 minutes north of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which makes it pretty easy to access if you're traveling through Pennsylvania and you just want to check out the trails. I made the decision to build the park in Imler because I live about 20 minutes away, it had a good elevation profile, and I could actually afford the land there. So from a business standpoint, the ideal park location is probably right next to a major city, because then you can pull all the people from there much easier. But in reality, this is really hard to do because it's really hard to find large pieces of land for sale near any population center. And then when you do, they tend to cost a lot more money because people want to develop them and not build bike parks on them. So that just makes it much more challenging. My belief is that if I build a good enough trail system, people will travel to ride the trails. And I think that view has merit, since both myself and many riders I know will frequently travel 1 to 2 hours for great trails. Now, there's always caveats to this. If you have awesome trails within 30 minutes of you, you're probably not driving 2 hours to a bike park. But on the other hand, if you don't have that many great trails with big jumps and that sort of stuff near you, you're more willing to drive 2 hours. So take that into account whenever you're figuring out your area. But in my area, most of the trails that have jumps are all on private land, and you have to know somebody to get access to them. So having something that's open to the public and is only 2 hours away is pretty reasonable. The next question I've seen a lot is, how can I help or get involved? Well, the simplest way is just to subscribe, hit the like button, and share these videos with people who might be interested. I know you're probably sick of hearing that from people on YouTube, but that is the easiest way to sort of get the word out and spread this so that, later on when I try to get sponsors and that sort of thing, this will really help. Another option is that if you are local and you want to help on a dig day, you can go to the website, squonkbikepark.com, and there is a form to sign up just with your email address, and you'll get notified of dig days. Those probably won't start until next spring, since I don't see many volunteers wanting to freeze their butts off outside with us. But I will be working all winter long, and I might find some opportunities for volunteers who want to get involved in the winter. If you really do want to donate money, or give us money, you can join the Patreon. I don't really love having one this early on. It kind of feels, I don't know, like a cash grab type thing. But I had a few people ask, so I figured I'd create one. This isn't a non-profit though, so technically it won't be a donation. And if you prefer to give money as a one-time thing, I can look into setting something up for that. But Patreon was just the easiest option to start. I'll also likely have t-shirts available to order before too long. The main reason I don't have that is that I need to get the Squonk design finalized, and then I need to work with a t-shirt company to actually get high quality shirts printed. But once that's all done, I will have some t-shirts that people can order, and that way you can support the bike park while also getting some cool swag to wear. Another common question is, when can I ride there, or when will the park be open? So I don't have a set opening date yet because it just depends on so many factors that aren't finalized, and I just don't want to set a date and just rush to get to that date and have a crappier park opening on that time. For instance, one of the things that is kind of in the air right now is if any of the trail builders I know will be able to help out some next year. I know a few people who build great trails, but they often are busy with other projects, so it's really going to depend on their availability and whether or not they can come help out a bit. Another factor is whether or not I end up getting a bigger machine. This would really speed up things like big jumps, berms, and fixing the shuttle road, but it puts a little more strain on the financial side, so I need to see if it fits into my budgeting, and if it makes sense, and kind of go from there. I've had a few ride days with locals this year, and I plan to host more next year to get feedback. Just as we develop the trails, it's good to get other people on them to give some sort of feedback. So if you are local and you do want to check the place out before opening, you can reach out, but the easiest way is going to be to go to the website and sign up for Dig Day notifications, as I'm going to heavily prioritize people who are helping make this park a reality, and we usually do a couple laps after digging in the summer anyway. I think that covers all the major questions I saw, but if I missed one, let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for the support and positive vibes. I was kind of expecting a number of people to be telling me why this would never work, but instead it feels like everyone is rooting for me to succeed, which is pretty incredible.